right. Welcome back to Club Innovators Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle. And with me today is a very special guest. We have Evan Schiller, who's a renowned golf course photographer and former PGA professional whose work truly speaks for itself. Evan has photographed over 700 championship golf courses throughout the United States and really around the world. So if you want to see his work real quick, I'll pub it. It's at evanschillerphotography.com if you have any questions on that as we get into the episode. Evan, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. We were kind of talking before this, and I shared how, just if you talk about really photography and golf course photography, especially drone work and things of that nature, you're the first name that comes up. When I Google it, obviously a lot of your work comes up, so it's very interesting to talk to you about this. But let's get a little bit into your background first. You went from a PGA professional to a photographer. Can you kind of share a little bit about that journey and what led you to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, I had a father who, introduced me to golf, took me out to play golf, gave me my first golf lessons, and then I started playing tournament golf, amateur, junior golf, amateur golf, played college golf at University of Miami. Then I turned pro, played mini tours. I went through the tour school, came close, actually even qualified for some PGA Tour events.
Yeah.
Did the Monday qualifying thing. And then I worked, I want to say 5 years at two clubs at Quaker Ridge and Westchester Country Club in Westchester, New York. And I don't know exactly when, but actually probably goes back to my mother, who when I was, 7 or 8 years old, bought me this little Instamatic camera. And, we go on family trips and take photos. I take photos, and, she commented a couple times, "Oh, these are pretty good." I don't know. I'm just snapping away at stuff. I didn't know. In fact, I think I still have some of the photos in a box from when we went to Lion Country Safari in Florida. I think it was in West Palm Beach.
Oh yeah, I've been
there. I don't
there.
even know if it's still there. I think I still have the photos from there. That was like my first photo shoot officially. I started when I was playing tournament golf. I just started taking a camera along with me. Just taking pictures for fun of, golf courses, my friends, and just for, it's just for fun. I would take them and put them hang them up on my wall. It's like all across my wall with these little 8x10s and these little plastic frames, and from all the places I had played or gone, never thinking that it would ever amount to anything. And then I worked as an assistant at Westchester. And the director of golf there was John Kennedy. Director of instruction there was Tom Patry. And the Westchester hosted the Buick Classic, which, was later became part of the FedEx thing. And it was one year during the tournament, I was talking to Tom, and we said, "Hey, maybe we should put some photos in the pro shop and try and sell them." And I laughed. I thought that was pretty funny. Like, who the heck's going to buy these things? And, I went down, I got some printed, went to a local framer, got them framed, put them up in the pro shop, and I sold a few. It was like the first day I put them up, it wasn't even the tournament. It was like a Monday or Tuesday, and a couple, sold. And so I had to go back and get some more. And so I think it was at that point I went, okay, well, maybe somebody will actually buy these. And, then started working with a few other clubs in the area, and, one thing led to another. And, here we are, or whatever, how many years later.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, right? You kind of do these things as a hobby, and then there's that moment that it clicks that you're like, oh, maybe this could be something else. And
I never thought, and even, when I first started off, it was still, I was make a little money, but nothing much. And I just thought, like, I always had this vision of a life of a struggling photographer, right? And there was a gentleman who was a friend of mine. He wasn't a member at Westchester. He was a member at another club, and I had got to know him through another mutual friend. And he was in the he had a lot of different businesses, but he was involved in the as a consultant to I think the garment district. And he says, I know a lot of photographers in New York who do really well, really, really well. I said, well, I'm not in New York. And so he pushed me to stay with it. So I'm glad I did.
Yeah, now it's turned into a flourishing career, right?
Yeah.
And one of the most well-known golf photographers around. So let's talk a little bit about the actual photography and things. So,
Sure.
When you're trying to capture that perfect shot, right? What elements do you consider essential when you're looking to take that of a golf course or a particular hole or things of that nature?
Yeah. Well, I never really had any photography lessons, so to speak. And, I had a while back had a photographer who he lived in the same building I did. This is way back. And, we would talk from time to time. And one of the things he said to me, he goes, as a photographer, you're responsible for everything in that frame. Make it interesting. So I don't know, the light makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Usually my window to shoot, capture the best light is usually an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. The window, I usually shoot for a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon, but the window where you get the really great shots is about an hour. And it's that, hour when the sun is low, and it's the light. The light is warmer, it's softer, but it also casts shadows.
Yep.
Which defines things better.
Yeah, right. It's that golden hour that everyone talks about.
You
correct?
see little undulations. You see, nuances of a golf course that you wouldn't necessarily see, when the sun is high in the air. So the light makes a huge difference. The angle at which you shoot makes a big difference in order to capture the light. Even though you use a drone, I don't always fly it up high. Sometimes I may fly it 10 feet off the ground or 5 feet off. And it just kind of depends, framing the photo. So, you're capturing the golf hole, maybe the way the architect wanted to see it, but also that's something that's really interesting, where, you're capturing that light as it, maybe cast shadows on a bunker or a mound or the green. So, it's kind of the angle that you shoot at, the framing of the image, the hole, obviously, that you're shooting makes a good difference. Because sometimes, a really good golf hole may not necessarily be a picturesque one.
Correct.
Although, if you catch, you could have the most mundane golf hole, but if you capture in the nice light, the other thing that makes a huge difference is the weather. Not just the sun, it's the clouds. I was just on a shoot, and one day it was a beautiful clear day. The next day I took a shot from the same angle, but there was clouds in the sky, and the light was completely different just because of the moisture in the air.
Oh yeah.
The clouds in the sky made the whole, the color of this photo completely different. So
yeah, I think you make great points there, between lighting and different days. And I love what you said about the holes. I've been out there and I've done it myself. And just like you said, you'll talk to maybe the golf pro or something, or maybe you get to talk to architects. I don't, but they'll say, oh, this is our premier hole. And you'll get out there and you'll want to go, take a photo of it. And you're like, doesn't quite photo the way that you want it to. But hey, 14 looks immaculate during the sunrise, right? And they were wanting, they were telling you 15's the best hole. So I always find that a little ironic. I said, look, just because it's your best hole doesn't mean that's the one we want to always, use as the picturesque
it may not be
photo.
the most photogenic hole.
Yeah.
And, maybe, like I said, maybe the best, but it may not be the...
Correct.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about technology, you touched on it. Don't want to age you too much here, but I do believe that you are old enough to probably have taken photos before drones and after drones and kind of the evolution of that. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you did before drones and then how you've transitioned into drones and kind of modern photography?
Yeah. PD and AD, right? Well, yeah, before drones, I used lifts, bucket trucks, ladders, helicopters. I've even gone up in a like a forklift and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Get up elevation, because getting elevation is really important, even if it's 10 feet.
Correct.
And I remember back in those days where I'd be in a lift and the guy would drive me out there, would go up, and I'd move it around. And, I'd look over to the right and there's a lake. And I said, God, if I could get out over that lake,
yeah,
shoot this way, would be really, shoot this angle, would be really great. But you couldn't.
Correct.
And I always said, God, I wish I I literally remember saying this. I said, I wish I had a flying camera. So I could fly it out over there, right? Or, a remote control helicopter or something. So my brain was already working in that way. So, now, how many years later? Well, first of all, when I started off, I was shooting film. So
yeah, even more important, right?
Yeah, I would travel with all these rolls of film. I would shoot 2 1/4. So it was, I'd have all these rolls. Going through security in airport was a real doozy, because they'd look at this stuff and go, what is this?
Correct.
I said, it's film. And they go, well, open it up. I said, well, you can't, because you'll ruin it. So you'd always travel with rolls of film. And then, after you were done with the shoot, you'd have to send the film off to get processed. So there was no digital, there was no drones. But now, everything's digital, and you have drones. So, you see everything, you shoot right away. And drones have been a huge the biggest game changer, because you don't need lifts, you don't need ladders, you don't need all that stuff, because the drone has taken the place of that. Like I said, I can get to places that I couldn't get before, in between trees, over a lake, way up high, even 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Just, I go 10 feet, but do it much quicker and much more efficiently, and cover much more ground than I could previously.
Yeah, no, these are all great points. And right, you just talk about it. And again, I've done the same thing where you're trying to squeeze it in between 2 tree limbs, because this is the perfect angle of the light. And then probably much like you spend about 15 minutes getting the drone to the right spot, because you don't want it to hit a tree branch, but that's the shot, right? So It's always an adventure.
Yeah.
But I love what you... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. And I take off all the, anti-crash things, because you can't get close to anyway. So
correct. If you don't know what he's talking about out there, there's different modes a drone can fly in, and one of them is sport mode, which will turn off all of your sensors, where you can fly as close as you want, but it also will fly very fast. So there's definitely some touch with that. I've crashed 1 or 2 in my day, if you can't tell. So I love what you talked about with technology and traveling. Obviously, you talked about the toughness with the film, but even with the new stuff, right, they have ion lithium batteries. So it is a struggle to travel sometime with those, because you can't check any of your gear for the most part, unless you remove every single one of those batteries. And if you're anything like me, you probably have 20 plus batteries when you travel, correct?
Well, it brings up an interesting thing is, you can, I about 2 years ago, I started shooting with the Sony AirPeak, which flies a DSLR 61 megapixel camera, which is kind of nice. But, traveling with it, you got to check it in a case. So you check it on the plane, but you can't check it with the batteries. That's been a huge game changer. I mean, just quality of the images, because you're shooting at a Sony A7R5.
Yep.
So it was this past summer. And so I would do is just take the batteries on the plane with me. And they're fairly large, they're fairly large batteries that go into that thing. And so I traveled with, I think, 12 or 14 batteries. And they're big and they're heavy.
Yep.
And I put them in my bag and go on the plane. And, you go through security, and lots of times they'll stop you and open your bag, and they look at it and they'll wipe them off, or they'll send them through again because they can't see through them. But in July, I was in LaGuardia, and they stopped me. They open the bag and they start looking at this. One guy starts talking to another, and they go, "What is this?" I said, "It's a battery." And they start looking at the specs, and what are the specs? And I told them what the specs were. And I said, "Well, you can't take this on the plane." I said, "Well, yes, I can. It's within the realm,
the parameters."
Yeah. He goes, "No, you're only allowed to take 2 on." That's, what do you mean? The size of the battery, you're only allowed to take 2. I mean,
yeah.
I said, "Are you sure?" "Yes, it's on our website." I said, "Well, no offense, sir, but I travel just about every week. I am on and off planes through airports all over the place, and nobody has ever said a word to me about
Correct.
this." They wouldn't let me on the plane. They go, "Well, you can talk to Delta and see if they'll let you on." And so I went downstairs, and the guy says, "Well, no, and I went on their website, and it does say that on their website. You're only allowed 2 batteries of this size.
Oh, wow.
Or you can take 4 if 2 are attached. Like if 1 or 2 are in the drone or I went, holy crap." So, yeah.
So no more Delta is what you're saying.
Well, no, I happen to be, it has nothing to do with Delta. It's an FAA thing, because then I went on American's website.
Yeah.
They're all like that. The thing is, nobody enforces it. That's so what I started doing, I started shipping my batteries.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
I couldn't afford to get stopped again.
Yeah, that's interesting to know. I've got 3, so I've never incorporated it. Now, I don't have the same drone as you. Mine's all in just one case. I do the Mavic 3 Pro. So
yeah.
But yeah, I've never gotten a question from that. They've always wanted me to check it, and I'm like, "Look, they're ion lithium batteries. You can't check it." And they're like, "Okay, go get on the plane." But never had that before. So,
well, those batteries, because I have a Mavic as well, those batteries about half the size of the ones that are on there. So, because I've checked the Mavic, and they've never stopped me on those, but they've stopped me with the
big
other
ones. Love it.
So yeah. So yeah.
So we'll get back to some of the stuff. I know some of you people are probably getting drugged down to the specs here, but we're just nerding out on the drones. So talking about the challenges of golf course photography, you touched on a few of them, but what are some common challenges you face when photographing courses, and what do you do to overcome them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, I noticed that, one of the things I noticed, if the better prepared I am, the less challenges there are.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges, well, it's obviously weather, but I have no control over that one.
Correct.
But, given that my window to shoot is pretty small, I have to make the best of my time. So I always make it a point, like, I never like to show up at a golf course having not seen it. Like, just go out there and say, "Oh, okay, I'll look around, but while you're looking around, you're missing."
Yeah.
So always make it a point to get there ahead of time. Like I say, if like I'm going to shoot on a Monday, I always make sure to get there early enough on Monday so I can go out and scout the course, so I can learn my way around, not learning to get around the golf course, but also knowing, okay, I want to shoot this hole in the morning, I want to shoot this hole in the afternoon, this hole could be both, at what time? Well, this one I want to shoot earlier, this one a little later, because, the sun may not hit it until then, I mean, it's all an educated guess, but it gives you some sense. So that one of the challenges is just navigating a golf course and making, in a finite time period to capture the holes in the optimal light.
Absolutely.
Which is the goal. The other challenge is golf. More so in the afternoon and then the morning, because you
Correct.
have a lot of golfers out there, and so you have to navigate around that. Sometimes I'll work with courses and they'll block tee times.
Yeah.
The other is coordinating with the golf course superintendent, because in the morning they got to get the course ready for play, and you're going out there to shoot, and you can't have them go out, have their guys drive all over the place. There's
Correct.
dew, makes tracks, so you can't shoot it. So the biggest challenge is I'm not saying this in a bad way, is just coordinating with the golf course superintendent and making sure that, his guys, we've coordinated. In other words, so he's either mowed out the holes I want to shoot in the morning, or directed his crew in a different direction, or wait. So it could be, working with the golf course superintendent, the condition of the course. If you have, like, you go out on a Monday, like say Monday morning, you want to go shoot, but you've had a weekend of play, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, of cart traffic. You see all those cart tracks, and it doesn't look great, especially in the morning if there's dew. You see all the cart tracks in the dew, even though somebody hasn't driven. So there's cart tracks. So, it's the course conditions, it's working with superintendent, it's the weather, it's play, that kind of stuff. And that, even when, you go out there, and sometimes, like I just did a shoot in Florida last week, and, the superintendent was great, and the course wasn't open yet. So they had just done a renovation. It was Hunters Run.
Nice.
Did a renovation. So there's nobody out there, but, so the superintendent tells everybody to stay off. Meanwhile, you got food and beverage driving around. You got other people who didn't demo and drive, you're out there shooting, and they drive right in front of you, right across the fairway, and make tracks in the dew. And so it's just stuff like that.
I love it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me laughing at it, because I've been through the same things, right? You're out there, you're like, this is the perfect shot in the morning, and then someone drives across it, and you have these cart tracks across the dew, and you're like, oh man. And then you got to try to figure out, I don't know how much you do of this, you can correct a little bit of it in Photoshop, or Lightroom, or one of those. So you're like, in your head, you're sitting there going, can I correct this, or do I just need to come back later? And usually the answer is come back later, but then you kind of lose the light, right? So it's that catch-22.
Yeah. A perfect example, I had a shoot. It was this amazing morning, amazing clouds, and this whole beautiful par 3 over the water. It was a beautiful par 3 over the water. This cool, amazing clouds to the north. And so I'm shooting, but the tee was all marked up from the mower. Like they had mowed it the day before. The tracks, the mower was really heavy, and it made deep impressions in the tee. And it was hard to see when I was shooting. And then I got back and I looked at it and went, oh, God.
Oh no.
So, I mentioned it to the superintendent, and they said, well, okay, we'll fix it. Well, maybe we'll just mow it again, or just take some rollers out there and flatten it out. So I went out the next morning, and the tracks were gone, but it was a beautiful, clear morning, and it wasn't
not the same light,
nice.
right? Yeah.
So, I usually opt for Photoshop, and like I said, that's why the planning and the coordinating is really important, to avoid that stuff. And having done this over 20 years now, you know what to expect.
Yeah.
And even though you may try to, cross, dot all your I's and cross all your T's and think you have all your bases covered, there's always something.
Always something. I got one for you, just real quick before we move on to the next thing. Went out and did one a couple months back in Florida. There was a controlled burn that day. So the entire sky was filled with smoke.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, maybe I'll get some good pic. No, it completely ruined the entire shoot. So I was just like, oh man, couldn't shoot one direction the whole time. It was a nightmare, but it is what it is. We got back out there and we got it fixed. So, all right. So obviously we just talked about, you've done photography at over 700 courses. among those numerous courses you photographed, do any stand out as particularly memorable or challenging? And I know this is a really tough question, but what are the most memorable courses if you got a few to share with us?
Memorable courses.
Probably a lot of them.
Yeah. Trying to think. Well, I did I did a shoot. Well, it's interesting. You talk about controlled burn, right? So I was supposed to go out to Colorado in July to shoot Maroon Creek up in Aspen.
Yeah.
And we had the dates, and ironically, this is the same trip with the batteries.
Oh, wow.
So, well, I couldn't get on the plane with the batteries because I was going to Colorado. Yeah. And so my wife had dropped me off the airport. So I called her. She turned around and come to get me. And we're heading home. And it's like, now what the heck am I going to do? I got to, So as I'm driving home, we had just left the airport. The superintendent at Maroon Creek calls me and he goes, I know you're on your way out here. He goes, listen, the smoke rolled in last night.
Oh, wow.
The fires in California. He goes, is that going to be a problem? I went, well, it depends how bad the smoke is. So he sends me a photo, and it's just like, he goes, you can't see the mountains. I went, yes, that's a problem. He goes, and it's supposed to be here all week. I went, irony.
Right. Well, good news, because I'm not on the plane anyways.
I'm not on the plane anyway because they wouldn't let me. I said, maybe I should thank the guy at TSA, right? So fast forward, we rescheduled the shoot for end of September. He goes, well, maybe you should come out here when the color, the leaves are turning.
Yeah, the leaves changing.
When's that? End of September. Okay. So I went out there, I think it was last week of September. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous, right?
God. It was stunning. The colors were just absolutely beautiful. And, with the weather was beautiful. The course was just immaculate. The weather was great. The superintendent there was no screw ups. Everything went smooth. I mean, it was like the perfect shoot, right? So you had this beautiful course with the mountains and the aspens. The course was amazing. So that when you asked me that question, I mean, it was partly the course, but it was everything.
Just the entire thing, right?
It was the weather. Everything went smoothly with regard to the grounds crew, the setting, the course. Everything was just, it was like the perfect storm. Of good stuff.
Yeah, and it's ironic the way it works. So, you've photographed all over the United States, but you've also done some international work. So how does, photographing golf courses internationally differ from doing it in the United States, or does it?
It doesn't really, other than, the travel and going through security and, sometimes you got to jump through hoops to take, I don't think you're allowed to bring drones into Mexico anymore. I've gone there a lot. And so the challenges are just, which countries allow drones, or which do you have to get, a permit, or do you have to get, I'm going to Scotland later this year. And, basically you can go, but you got to pass their equivalent of the, Part 107 or, fill out a questionnaire and get authorization, get permission. Going through customs sometimes is a challenge, especially if it's I went to the Dominican Republic, and when I went in, thank God there was somebody there kind of escorting me who spoke Spanish. The guy wasn't going to let me in.
Oh, really?
Wrong. And I had asked, are they going to let me in? Yeah, no problem. And the guy was yelling in Spanish because he thought I was going to take this thing and sell it. So he wasn't going to let me in. So I, thank God I had somebody there who spoke Spanish who, talked them in. So it's just challenges like that. So, I was just in Costa Rica. It was no problem, but I had him write a letter for customs saying, hey,
Yeah.
he's here to shoot this, and then he's leaving.
Yeah. Now that makes sense. It's always a challenge, right? It's a cultural challenge there. So
Yeah. So the biggest challenge is just going through, customs or their drone policies. That's all.
yeah, it makes sense. So, I know that you probably have had some collaboration with golf course architects. Can you kind of discuss your experiences working alongside the architects when you're capturing, photography?
Yeah. I've only lots of times what'll happen with the architects is, they'll do their work and then the golf course will ask them, hey, we want to get this photograph. Who should we call? And I have some really great relationship with some architects who thankfully recommend me.
Yeah.
So it's great. I love working with those guys, and I love the conversations, because they're all really excited about their work. And, oh, this is amazing. I can't wait to have you shoot it. And I think they're really appreciative of my capturing it for them.
Yeah, I think that listen to someone talk passionately about a golf course before you take photographs of it is super valuable because you can tell, right, like you said, the work that goes into it. I think it fires you up a little bit to take the pictures as well because you're like, look, if they're this excited to talk about it, how excited are they going to be when we get the perfect picture, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that plays off each other. So that's a good piece right there.
Yeah, I remember I went out to shoot Gray Bull. It's Dormy Network's new golf course out in Nebraska, and I remember speaking to David McClay Kidd a couple times prior. He was so jacked up about it. He was so so excited about it's like I can't wait to see this place. And I've done a bunch of courses for Dana Fry and Jason Straka. They got a big project going on in Florida, and they're all excited about it, having me come down and shoot it. So I remember Dana Fry when he was doing Union League National down in New Jersey, and just it's like he was a kid in a candy store and talking about it. It was so cool. Yeah, it's exciting. Like you said, I get excited when these guys are so excited about their work. And I think I get I'm going to go there and do a good job for them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it's the same way, right? It's again, at times we do some similar things, and I can kind of speak from my experience, but, a lot of time I spend behind my computer doing a lot of things. So it's exciting to go to a golf course and work with them and try to get that perfect picture for them or the perfect video and things of that nature. And like I know, when you nail it, you're so excited to share it with them. You're like, oh man, I can't wait to send them this picture and get their reaction. And it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, it is.
And it's such a nice thing to kind of, get that back and forth. So
yeah. And lots of times I'll even while I'm there on a shoot, I'll, do some quick edits and text them some photos.
Yep. I always do that to get them fired up, right? If I can get a really cool one on day one, I'll kind of shoot it to them in a text. I'm like, hey, don't share this. And I kind of mess with them about it. I don't care if they share it, but I want to get them fired up about the next day. And then they're super interested. So let's talk a little bit about the demand for golf course photography and how it's changed over the years. What kind of trends have you seen? And then I'm going to ask you to project a little bit. Can you maybe foresee some trends coming up in the future?
Good question. Well, it seems like we're going through a boom right now.
Oh, yeah.
Have been for, over the last 5 years, really cranking up the last 3 years. There was a lull there for when I first started. There was, somewhat of a demand, and then it kind of rose, and then it fell a little bit. But now it's definitely there's a boom. There's a lot of, golf course. Golf is going through another renaissance. It seems like. It'd be interesting to see if it can be supported because there's a lot of courses being built. Both, there's a lot of high-end courses, there's public courses, there's a lot of stuff being built. And it'll be interesting to see if it can how long it's going to sustain, because, I mean, I would imagine that it's got to get saturated at some point. And just the way things go, there's ebb and flow to it. So, at some point it's gonna slow down again.
Yeah, no doubt. And we've kind of seen that from COVID. It boomed for a while and now it's leveling back off. But like you said, the need, a lot of golf courses I come across, especially if they're not super, super high end, you look at their photography and you just go to the websites. And if you're listening, you can flip through your website or other people's. You just kind of see that some of the photography is outdated, right? And it just looks like they need a refresh. So what is your recommendation on how often someone should refresh their photos of their course and maybe their facility?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, 10 years is too long.
I agree there. I agree.
It depends, if it's a new course, like I've done a lot of renovations and new courses, in the last 2-3 years. And, with a renovation or a new course, well, the golf course is a growing, it's not stagnant.
Correct.
It's a growing, evolving, changing thing all the time. And I don't mean like doing renovations. It's changing. Trees come down, things change. But if it's a new course, like it takes a while for it to grow in. There's, the couple of renovations and new course that I've done, you can see, it's beautiful, but, you can see the scars still from sodding, or, the vegetation hasn't grown in that well. I mean, I have courses I work with where I go back almost, like every other year, and a few have gone every year, or, I would think that, after 5 years, well, the golf course will change, but if you have photography, not that it gets stale, but I'm sure their courses are using it, maybe even for anywhere between 3 and 5 years, I would say. If you're using the photography over and over again and it's on your website, it might be time to refresh.
Yeah.
I think, to get a different, I mean, I'm sure there's always some images or hero images that people are going to use all the time.
Oh yeah.
But it's always nice to get new stuff in the mix and refresh it. 'Cause you just never know, because like I mean, I can go to a place for 4 days and shoot, and every day the course looks different.
Correct. It's so true.
Because of the weather, there's dew one day. Next day, there's no dew. One day, it's a clear sky. And the next day, there's some clouds in the sky. It depends. So you never know what, and to have somebody come and photograph a golf course, you pick, say, 3 days out of 3 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that happens in between. So, and obviously it depends on budget.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. It's kind of the same thing. And especially with the advent of how important your website is and now social media and everything, having that plethora of photos and or videos as well becomes important to a golf course, because, if you're not maxed out on your membership, maybe you're that club that's still looking for another 20 members to get to a wait list and things. People want to see photography. They want to see the course. We know from example in doing surveys and everything, millennial golfers want to see a drone of all 18. That's the biggest thing they look for. And so that's a piece that goes on YouTube, right? And that's another search engine. So yeah, that was one thing we experienced, was millennial golfers wanted to see just an 18 drone flyover of the course. And that was a big piece.
Each individual
hole, they would sit there and watch it. And I was like, I can't get most people to concentrate for 30 seconds, much less the 15 minutes for a flyover, but they'll kind of skip through and they'll fast forward and things. But
wow,
they love to look at the course before they become a member. And we found out that they want to, before they see that course in person, they want to go look at it online.
Okay.
And,
so this is millennials who are thinking about joining a course.
It's millennials. So it's right. It's my generation. And I kind of laughed at it when I did that. I said, I think that tracks, because I won't even go to a restaurant before looking at a Google review and looking pictures of it. And I was like, I don't know why I'm like that, but it seems like a lot of millennials are like me. So
yeah, no, I get it.
that was an interesting piece. So, all right. So got a couple more questions for you, Evan. Just some advice to aspiring photographers. If someone, what kind of guidance would you offer an individual aspiring to get into the field of golf course photography?
That's a good question. I get that one a lot. I get DMs like,
well, you are the authority.
How do I? Yeah, hardly. How do I get into golf course photography? How do I break in? I get the question of, I've reached out to a lot of courses but I haven't heard back. I get one of the things is like, you could imagine you're a GM or a marketing person at a golf course.
Yep.
And you're getting bombarded with emails, not just from, people want to come, imagine, especially some of the top course, they're getting bombarded with requests all the time. Yeah. So, I always say, if they already have had the golf course photographed, right? And why would they,
Correct.
So I'm not sure that I have any, great advice, but I think everybody needs to find their own way.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, and, maybe find your own niche, your own style, your own, for some people it may be videos, or some it might be photography. For some it might be a mix of both. For some it might be lifestyle. I don't know. I know it's probably a lot harder to break in now than it was on some level, because there's a lot of people out there doing it. But on the other, the flip side, when I started, there was no social media.
Yeah.
So you, like right now, you can go take pictures of a golf course and then post it on, a social media. Now, you got to gain followers too to get views. So, but the business is getting saturated with a lot of golf course photographers.
Yeah, 100%.
So I would just say, if you love doing it, just go do it.
But keep doing it right.
But do it the right way, because, no offense, but there's some people out there who are just not doing it the right way.
I don't disagree with you. So
they're flying drones where they shouldn't be flying them. They're,
correct.
If you're going to do it the right way. Get the proper permissions.
Go get your Part 107, get a
Part
drone,
107.
all those good stuff. Yeah.
Like I said, there's a number of people out there who are, flying drones where they shouldn't be. I mean, look at what's happening in California with the fires. There's, drones crashing into planes.
That's wild.
They're flying in places where there shouldn't be. They're unauthorized.
I know. It's my drone won't even take off unauthorized, so I even wonder what they're flying too. I have a DJI. They'll ground those real quick.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's finish up one last question. You do this quite a bit. You've done it for a very long time. So how do you maintain that passion for both golf and photography? And really, what keeps you motivated after all these years?
Yeah, wow, that's a good question. I love the creativity of it all. I love being like in the morning early. Like last week I was out at Hunter's Run in Florida.
Yeah.
And it was cold. It was 48 degrees, which is cold for Florida.
I am from Florida. That's cold for us. That's freezing.
Yeah, and it was cold for Florida. But it was just, I got out there early before the sun came up, and I just sat there and just, I was watching the birds, and I was, the bird life. I just love being out there early and late, and
peaceful,
waiting in the morning, like the anticipation, you pick a spot and I think, okay, it's going to be the sun. So, you go out there early in the morning and just the anticipation of like, okay, what's this going to look like when the sun comes up?
Yeah.
And then where am I going to, I think it's just the creativity of it all. I really love, I love golf, but I could probably go photograph anything and be happy.
That's true.
And do it. So, yeah, in every shoot I do to me is a new adventure.
Yeah.
It is. It's a new adventure. You may capture something really great that you never did before. And I mean, I really enjoy working with the golf courses and the clients, and, the membership directors, the marketing directors, the superintendents. That's one of the things that I love, connecting with the superintendents and just that conversations, just hanging out and talking with them. So and then, it's after the shoot, I come back and, I'll sit down in my office and start going through stuff. And it's like you just went out trick-or-treating, right? You come back and checking out all your candy.
Oh, yeah. Now, I know that well. So I think that's such a great answer to the question. I know I've been out there too. It's that peacefulness of sitting out there in the anticipation of doing something great. And then you get to bring it home and be creative, right? There are edits that go on in photography. I'm not saying that you're heavily editing everything, but there's little pieces that you can do to make a picture pop correctly.
Oh, yeah.
That takes some time to learn. I've been through that process. I've been really bad at it, and now I think I've gotten decent at it. I'm not going to say too much, but right. And so you do it year after year, and I hope one day, I get as good as you at it, right? That's the goal. So
yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And also I love the equipment I'm working with. It's like I'm finally, like using this Sony AirPeak with the
oh, it's awesome.
The DSLR, the Sony A7R5. I mean, I'm like, that's the flying camera that I always wanted to use, right?
No, that's the dream. I love it. So Evan, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. I think this is going to be so valuable for our listeners to hear from. Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything else that you want to touch on before I close out here?
Well, no, first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate, I love doing this. It's, I can't, I come home and I think I need some downtime. And then I'm home for a week and I went, okay, I got to go somewhere.
Need to do something.
I need to go somewhere, right? To go shoot somebody up. So, yeah, it's just, I appreciate being on. I love having these conversations.
Oh, it's awesome. I like it so much. It's been a conversation I've been wanting to have for a very long time, with you in particular. So I do appreciate you coming on. We appreciate everything. I'm sure our audience and our listeners will love it. So for me, Kyle, and for Evan, we appreciate you listening to this episode, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the Club Innovators Podcast.